Right. Try this again. So what we have going on here, we want to talk about today for a short while is understanding partials. So one of the big things with partials is understanding what it means to buy a partial or own a partial or what you're offering sellers. In this world right now, we have a lot of people out there who want to buy notes, but leave out the idea of buying or asking the question to the seller. And we have some people live in the Zoom call as well, asking the people, the seller, of what they need versus asking them, giving them an offer. So whenever you're making an offer to any seller, you should offer multiple options because you want a conversation versus just an offer and go away. You want to understand what they're looking for. So when we look at partials, partials basically is a generalization, is part of a note. If the loan is 30 years and you want to buy 5 years, fractionalization is something different. That's basically making a payment and cutting it up. But partial is could be a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever term you and the seller come together with. When we buy no partials, we're buying a string of payments that you're still in company with the seller of that partial, and you're working with them. If anything changes, you have the ability to reach out to them and talk to them. Now, when we work with note partials, it's a little bit different kind of calculation than we're used to. So we look at the fact that we have inside of our idea, our schedules, our amortization schedules, in note partials, there's three. We have our note partial, right? We have our the buyer of the partial, and we also have the seller of the partial. All three different amortization schedules are what it matters our solution is. Now, what happens with our situation? When the borrower makes payments, they make payments to whoever owns a note. So in our world, most of the time when you go ahead and you buy the note, you're literally buying a payment for a period of time. When you buy a whole loan, you're buying the payment to the end of the term. When you're buying a partial, you're buying payments until the term is over. So in a note partial situation, we have a lot of stuff here, right? Month one, month two, all the way down to payment 360. In the partial world, if we set this up that the partial buyer is only going to buy 60 months, and they're going to buy it at 31,372.77, which has a 12% interest rate, and you're going to get payments equal to the borrower's numbers, right? We get that information. Now, when we look at this stuff, we want to focus on the fact that we're buying part of that payment stream, which will end sometime in the future, right? 30 years from that date. So what happens here is the buyer of that partial will start receiving this payment at the time when they start making that agreement is made. I'm going to sell it to Bob on 10/1, and that payment is going to be received by Bob for a period of time. And that period of time is 60 months, right? And during that whole time, he's receiving $697.87, and his amortization schedule will continue just like a borrower's. So when we look at this stuff, and the seller will have a running total of what is owed to him outside of this number. He's not promised anything more than what this one is minus this. Okay? So if any time the borrower pays off, this seller, me, receives the difference between this and this number. So at any one time, this partial buyer wants to get bought out or something changes, we have a great situation to be able to sell the loan to a partial buyer and then get him out anytime. And we know what the balance of his loan is. This is the amortization schedule for 60 months at 12%. That easy. So when we make offers to our partial buyers, our sellers, we want to give them options. We want to look at the fact that what happens if we buy 24 months, 36 months, 60 months, or we ask them, hey, listen, how much money do you need to do whatever you need to do? And when we do that, it allows us to say, okay, you need 20 grand. Well, let me see how many payments I can buy for 20 grand that makes sense. And you're basically give them, you're receiving payments like a loan, but you're buying part, and the security instrument is the actual note behind the asset So you become owner of that note for that period of time, and your servicer is in a position to negotiate between you and the seller and let them know about information. If payment ends or payment has a problem or whatnot, there's where things change. You're also organizing with the seller. What happens if, when, and how do you handle it? What do I mean by that? If the seller, if the borrower, the original borrower, defaults, makes a payment off, easy, that's schedule B and C. But what happens if the escrow is not paid, right? If the borrower defaults, are you going to handle the foreclosure or will they? Maybe they'll say for interest rate will change, things like that. But you should always offer your seller the option to buy the entire note or a part of the note. So if we made this thing where the fact we're going to buy it for 20 grand, right? And we would have bought it, say for, for 65,000, we can literally tell the seller it's a $40,000 difference. Because at the time when this 24 months is up, what happens here is that borrower, that the seller of that note, right? The borrower still owes $85,000 in 24 months. In this case, in 36 months, the borrower still owes, the original borrower still owes 84. After 60 months, so on and so forth. So the seller of the note right now gets 20 grand, and they can continue to receive 85,000 plus the interest. Okay? Let me revert that back. Now, when we look at this stuff, if the borrower defaults, what happens? Well, there's a couple different options. Maybe the seller can quickly jump in place and fix it. Maybe you, the buyer of the parcel, will work out the foreclosure because maybe you're a little bit comfortable with that. Or maybe the seller work out some other negotiating tools. One of the cool things is, maybe depending on the option, your rate changes. So if you have Roth money or IRA money, this is a great option to get in for a little bit of money. Maybe I don't want to buy 60 months. Maybe I want to buy 5 months. Maybe I want to buy 1 year, right? Maybe I want to buy 120 months. So it all really matters of where you want to be and what you want to do with it. Okay? So when we look at this stuff, we want to make sure that we understand what we're getting into, and if the seller is someone we can do business with. Because at the end of the day, if the seller flakes off, you want to be in a position where you can maybe take over that note and be in a great spot to finish the foreclosure or do whatever you want to do with it. Okay. So one of the cool tricks that I want to show you guys is if we sit there and we say, listen, Tom Henderson we did a webinar with Tom Henderson a while back. You go to our bigkeepyholdings.com/webinars, and you look for Tom, you'll see a Tom Henderson back on August 2nd, 2021. It works out really cool. So we also dive into this stuff in our blogs, our blog pages and whatnot. We just launched a new blog the other day, first for seconds and whatnot. So if we have this loan that's $130,000, $360 a month, 5%, and our payment's $360, what would happen if we told the seller, hey, listen, instead of me buying this whole loan, I'm going to buy a partial of this loan, and I'll make a deal with you. This is a really cool trick. What happens if we sit there and we say, listen, we're going to buy this at 50% of the term and 50% of what's owed right now. Let's flip this over. We can do this on our calculator we have up here, or I'm going to use a spreadsheet for now. So we had 130,000. So if we take this out there and we made this 65,000 and we made this 180. Look at our percent. We went from a 5 to almost 10 in a matter of seconds. Oops, sorry. Which is really, really cool. Sorry about that. So when we look at this stuff, we want to make sure that we understand the game here of the calculator. When we do this, our game here is the fact that we can negotiate this stuff. Now, if we drop this in half again and make this 90 payments, look at our return. We're back, that 5% is now at 19.91. Now, you may ask, why does that happen? And the answer is, it happens simply because we literally took the situation and we never changed the payment amount. We literally took it and dropped the term by quarter and our term by quarter and our purchase price by quarter of what's balanced on the loan. And it returns a 19.91%. How crazy is that, right? If we drop this down, we would get back to 5. But because we dropped these and didn't drop that, our numbers change dramatically. All right. So when we look at these things, we want to make sure that we also understand where my schedule here is that while this loan is still going, at the end of this term, the seller is owed money. Now, I can see the fact that I'm going to get a big boost of return, which changes my IRR, right? So I'm going to get a big boost of money here instead of having to wait that 60 months and then start receiving money again. So it's a good technique if you need a boost of IRR and it looks good on the records. Now, what if there's no partial buyer want to buy another 60 months? Absolutely can do that. And typically it makes sense for both parties to do that if things are going well. There's nothing wrong with that. Now negotiate with your seller if you want to run a new amortization or whatnot. That's completely up to you, how you want to handle that. So, all right. Hopefully there's no questions. I flew through a lot of information here. Again, your servicer is going to work with you to make sure that you understand that payments are being made. And if payments stop, both parties are going to be notified. And this is what we do in buying partials. We literally look at our schedule and we figure out a yield number that we calculate that makes sense to us. In this case, we made it 12. I'm going to buy 60 months of payments for 12% at our payment, which is here for $697. And we're going to buy for $31,372.77, which equals a 12% return, our financial calculator. I can figure out anything I want here. This is our calculator that we created. You choose what you want to solve for. If I want to solve for term or payment or whatever, and it kind of calculates things for us and whatnot. We have a note seller calculator in there too. So if there's any question about that, put that in the chat. I would love to see where you're at, what your thoughts are, what your concerns are. And if this is something you're not doing when you're making offers to seller, you really need to look at that and really be focused on where what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because if not, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble moving forward because you're maybe offering it way too low of a deal than you really should. All right. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm sure you can put in the chat and go from there. And we'll be love to share. All right, guys. Hope all is well, and we will talk to everyone soon.